Welcome back, guys. Your lore knight, Sir Vertigo, is here. Today, we're going to explore the plane of the First World, which was the first attempt at creating the material plane. I would love to have you hang around until the end of the video. I have an announcement about a giveaway when I hit that 1,000 subscriber mark. Now, the material plane is basically the world as we know it. It has constant laws of physics, such as gravity, speed of light, thermodynamics, etc. It is the everyday normal world that all of us watching this video live in, with the added benefit of deities, magic, and all the other standard fantasy bits added in. Now, with a simple overview of the material world, I can explain why the first world is so unique in comparison. In the days before creation, the primordial gods decided they wanted to create life. But to host life, they needed a place for this life to take root. So the gods banded together and created a test bed for everything. A blank canvas, if you will, where they could dabble in different laws and rules for how life would work, bringing forth the smallest bacteria to the largest of behemoths. They created sentient races and mythical creatures, forms of magic and strange metallic ores. They created the rivers, mountains, floating islands, vast forests. And then, after this countless age of experimentation, when they had a fully working model universe, they then copied that to the material plane as the finished product. Then, they painted this new material plane over the first world, and then completely and utterly abandoned it. Like a painter brushing over his failed sketches, they remain, hidden below the fabric of reality we see, still visible in places and still traversable. The residents of the first world that were sentient enough to acknowledge this abandonment raged and despaired at their creators, cursing the gods for throwing them out like unwanted garbage. Yet, over time, this forgotten plane grew, evolved, and mutated. Much like an abandoned garden will overgrow given enough time, the plane twisted and turned upon itself, with no intelligent design behind its many changes. Eventually, the First World Denzians would come to see the material plane as a world dragged down by the laws of physics, the flow of time, and most dreadful of all to them, the cycle of death. You see, the material plane is a realm where souls can gather life experience that will then direct them toward a particular afterlife, in a cycle that's called the River of Souls. When Pharasma directs a mortal soul to a particular afterlife, their soul passes energy to the god that controls that afterlife, as a massive form of energy transfer. Since this form of soul transfer was never added to the first world, they are apart from this river of souls. While souls do pass through the first realm before they make it to Pharasma, they leave behind imprints that eventually gather themselves into new residents of the first world, but their souls cannot leave, granting them effective immortality. They can die from either wounds, disease, or powerful magics, but given enough time, their souls will reincarnate, although this can be more inconvenient than it might sound at first. Rebirth is seemingly random, and you could appear as a baby, or with no past memories, or so far away that you never see anyone you knew in your previous life again, or any other manner of changes could happen. Nearly everything within the first world is fluid, changing from day to day, or even hour to hour depending on how stable your portion of the plane is. You may make camp beside a beautiful glistening lake, with a forest to your other side, only to wake up at the top of a mountain. A town that previously was a scant few miles down the road may have an entire mountain range spring up between you and it. Or a journey that appeared to be days may be unexpectedly over in mere hours as the land folds in on itself to bring you closer to your goal. The land is more present than on the material plane, with every sort of terrain imaginable and many that are even unimaginable. The trees here are taller, the oceans wider, the valleys are deeper, and flowers are brighter and more pungent. This isn't just poetic nonsense either. The first world is a tad bit closer to the positive energy plane, and this closeness grants it a higher vitality and fertility than the material plane has. With this increase in positive energy, magic may work differently from spell to spell. A standard fireball may either produce nothing but a spark or blow up far larger than expected due to an increase in oxygen or just a fluctuation in magic. A dancing light cantrip could produce dozens of orbs instead of 4, or could explode on contact, or come out blue, or any other number of possibilities. But for all the mishaps that may happen for arcane magic users, divine casters may have an even worse disability. Upon first entering the first world, clerics may experience a terrifying sense of disconnect, as if their god had completely abandoned them, possibly for the first time. Divine magic still works, but even less reliably than arcane, if the user can gather the will to make the spells work at all. Time is another very fluid concept in the first world, with time running faster in one area or not running at all in another, or even stranger, it can run faster for one person while running so slow for another that they appear stopped in time. Luckily for travelers from the material plane, having lived with such a firm sense of time our entire lives, it will force a consistent time stream around us, at least temporarily. And you may be thinking, it sounds like a chaotic, dangerous world. Is it really worth the risk? Well, here's the main caveat to the first world. The first world, as it is today, is heavily influenced by willpower. If a being has a strong enough will and wishes for a relatively normal world, the land around them will stabilize, time will flow as normal, and even the laws of physics will work correctly. Gravity, thermodynamics, the speed of light all resume normal operation. Magic forms and casts as expected, or reality can be what the willer wishes. With a strong enough will, a being can use the first world to control a bubble around them like a god, stopping time, or bending the landscape of the first world to travel from rift to rift in an instant, passing across Galarian as fast as they wish. This mutability is how the few constants of the first world have been formed, with beings known as Eldest dedicating themselves to using their vast willpower to force their homes, cities, forest, etc. to remain in a single place with a constant state in this ever-warping reality. For example, Anophelus, one of the first world's few metropolises, is constructed around the legs of the twin gargantuan statue-like eldest, Imbrix. The city is built atop their feet and ankles, with some of the oldest districts reaching to their knees, but drilling into their stone-like flesh is banned, for fear of breaking their concentration or rousing their wrath. For miles around the city, the landscape is set in stone, never warping or changing so long as Imbrix works to keep the surroundings constant. The eldest are viewed as gods of the first world, since they stepped up and provided the residents of the first world with the stability that the gods took away when they abandoned the realm. Worshipping an eldest grants spells much as worshipping a deity does, but for the most part, with no afterlife to really worry about, religion as a whole is not a very common concern in the first world. So, we've discussed how the first world differs from the material plane. Everything is fluid, and willpower can change how the plane works around you. The only rule for the first world is that change is the only constant. With the first world being another plane of existence that is just slightly to the side of our own, you cannot just walk down the road, take a left at the meat hall, and pop into the first world. It's a bit more difficult than that. Of course, there's the normal ways you can travel to any planes, like the gate spell or plane shift, but those are a bit higher level, reserved for at least a 17th level or 9th level characters respectively. But this isn't the way that most people travel from the material plane to the first world. Most people will stumble upon breaches, where the planes rub together and create breaking points, allowing free travel between these two realms. These breaches are usually caused by vast magical energies being released on one of the two planes, such as creation or destruction of an artifact, the death of a powerful fae, or lightning striking a druidic circle. Any of these can result in such a magical backlash that a hole is torn in the walls of the planes, be it by magical, psychic, or even physical energy. Those who know what to look for can easily identify a breach by the energy seeping either into or from the first world, unless the breach has been purposely hidden, at which point the breach was probably intentional. Indeed, some breaches have been purposely created when the Fae needed a powerful hero to find aid that they could not find in their own realm. Breaches can remain open for decades or even centuries, or they can seal up in mere hours, even if it's a permanent breach. Due to the chaotic, ever-changing nature of the first world, a breach is not guaranteed to be there physically when you seek to return to the material plane. As such, many of the material plane citizens that are within the first world became trapped there by stumbling upon or failing to find the return breach again to return home. Imagine this as a scenario. You stumble upon a breach while picking mushrooms in the forest, and through this hole in reality, you can see massive trees and beautiful verdant fields. Of course you're curious, and you pass through and appear inside of a beautiful forest clearing. But as you peer around and study your surroundings, you turn back to return home, only to find a mountain range where before there was the other half of the forest clearing. Now completely lost, with no idea where the breach has moved, what direction do you take? Will you manage to make it back to the breach before it's either sealed or moved even further away? Most don't, so I truly hope luck is on your side, or you may be a first world citizen now. As important as knowing how to travel to and from the first world is, knowledge of what manner of creatures may await you through this portal may be even more important. But that kind of info will have to wait for my next video, because to list them all here would drag this video past the 30-minute mark. As always guys, I'd love to have you join me on my Discord, where you can chat with me daily, and I also have a Patreon in the comments if you'd like to support me in my efforts to chronicle all of the Pathfinder lore that I can do. As of the time of this recording, I am sitting at 765 subs, and I am blown away by how fast this channel is growing. With that said, when I hit that 1000 sub mark, I want to either give away a Sir Vertigo themed t-shirt or a 6 to 7 inch statue of your D&D character or of Sir Vertigo. I would imagine that most people will choose a statue of their own character, but I will leave that up to whoever wins, and I'll choose a winner by listing everyone who comments on my first video once I'm past that 1000 sub mark, and randomly choosing from everyone who comments. So please, subscribe, give me a like if you enjoyed this video, drop me a comment letting me know what you'd like to see me do in the future, and I would love to see you here with my next video. This has been Sir Vertigo. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good week, guys.